Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Sight for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Saturday the 18th of June 2022. This week has seen the production of our Sight for Wight avoidable sight loss video. On Tuesday the 21st of June it is midsummer solstice and therefore the longest sunshine day of the year and the most harmful sunshine day of the year, as the UV rays are directly overhead. Therefore, we have chosen this day to send out our Sight for Wight avoidable sight loss video to all the primary schools here on the island. The intention is that every primary school child on the Isle of Wight is united against avoidable sight loss by watching the video on Tuesday. The video includes our 4 animals which are used in our education programme. The animals tell the story of why it is important to protect your eyes against harmful UV rays, which can prevent cataracts and age-related macular degeneration in future years. We believe this is an extremely important message to get across to children. Children's eyes, of course, do emit more rays than adult eyes as the lenses are so crystal clear and new. The video also features presentations from myself, Lisa, and Ruth, both of whom live with severe sight impairment, but both of whom always still protect their eyes from UV rays by wearing sunglasses. We hope the message gets across to children of the importance of protecting their eyes, and we will continue to reinforce the message until it is safely received. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Sight for Wight.
This is Chris, reading an article from the Island Echo. Face masks no longer required in hospitals or GP surgeries, but Isle of Wight slow to react. A major change in guidance from NHS England means that face masks are no longer required in hospitals and GP surgeries. But the Isle of Wight NHS Trust is yet to reveal its new rules for St Mary's Hospital. New infection control guidance from the UK Health Security Agency states that patients and visitors to hospitals and GPs are no longer required to wear a mask, with the matter being left to personal preference. It is recommended that masks are still worn by those with coughs and sneezes, as well as those with COVID-19. Masks should also be worn in high-risk areas, such as oncology. Furthermore, rules on visiting hours should be reverted to pre-COVID policies, NHS trusts are being told. It is good news for staff as well, with the new guidance stating that staff no longer have to mask up all the time. That comes after more than 2 years of strict infection control. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust is understood to be working on its new policy, but has been slow to react and release details. The maternity department did share the news that masks were no longer required in the department last week, but has since deleted its social media post. It's understood that some local GP surgeries are still insisting people wear masks, despite having no legal reasoning nor medical guidance for such rules. The Health Secretary has previously threatened to name and shame those who don't lift restrictions and get back to normal.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Island leaders seek increased landscape protection for the Isle of Wight. Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley and members of the ruling alliance group at the Isle of Wight Council say they will join forces to campaign for a new status for the Isle of Wight, which will help the island achieve a sustainable future. The island's MP has written to the government to ask it to study and explore the idea of an island status, which would provide a greater level of landscape protection for the entire island, as well as support for a more prosperous future for islanders. The campaign builds on the work led by the Isle of Wight AONB partnership in securing UNESCO Biosphere Reserve status for the Isle of Wight in 2019. Since he was elected as the island's MP, Bob Seely has been campaigning for better protection for the island from greenfield development and for an extension of the existing Isle of Wight AONB designation. He has said he is hopeful that the government's new landscape protection bill could be the enabler to increase landscape protection on the island. In putting the island's case forward to the government, Seely has written to DEFRA Minister Lord Benyon outlining reasons for an island designation. First, he said, while the island's protected landscape was significant, it was also fragmented, with the AONB divided up into 6 separate pieces, which didn't marry with the whole island being included in the UNESCO biosphere. Speaking about the idea, Mr. Seely has said, a few generations ago, a national park on the Isle of Wight would have been a great idea. Despite the idea remaining popular, it is sadly probably not feasible. However, what is achievable is working with the Council and other groups to get a new designation in law that recognises the unique status of islands in the UK. If the government agrees in principle to this change, I would like the Isle of Wight to serve as the first example. Whilst the purpose is to primarily unite landscape protection and nature recovery under a single overarching landscape protection designation, while recognising additional protections such as SSSIs, etc., an island designation would also help to serve as a branding for islands to help with tourism. By preserving and enhancing the island's key tourism assets, the undisturbed countryside, sweeping vistas, history, heritage and outdoor sports, an island designation would be a significant contributor to the island's tourism economy. Likewise, other islands may decide that they would benefit from such a branded status. Jonathan Bacon, Isle of Wight Council Cabinet Member for the Environment, said, the current administration is fully supportive of the proposal to seek an island designation. A single protected landscape status would fit with the island's single unitary authority, a single national character area, Natural England definition, and the entire island status as a UNESCO biosphere. Nature recovery and other landscape support plans would only be strengthened by being combined under a single body with a single high standard of landscape protection throughout. An island designation would allow maritime and landscape protection to exist within the same authority plan, helping to provide a coherent and integrated response to the protection of the natural world. Laura P.C. Wilcox, leader of the Isle of Wight Council, has said, recognising island status for islands, especially those with a high degree of natural beauty, makes sense for those islands, but also for landscape protection. It is a designation which can be applied elsewhere and can help to create a sustainable future for those islands, both for humanity and the land and seascapes. Bob Seely concludes, I want the island to make progress in securing increased landscape protection, and with the government planning to increase landscape protection nationally, I want us to be proactive and build on the excellent work of the Isle of Wight AONB in developing the UNESCO biosphere. An island designation will also be a common sense next step for the Isle of Wight to ensure a prosperous and sustainable future, and would help the government to reach its target of committing to protect 30% of the UK's land by 2030.
memorial service marks 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War. From Island Echo, Joyce reading. The 40th anniversary of the end of the Falklands War was marked in Newport with a commemoration service at the town's war memorial. Veterans and dignitaries and public service representatives gathered in St Thomas's Square at 11 a.m. on Tuesday to observe a 2-minute silence, with bugler Darrell Pitcher sounding the last post. It was followed by a poignant memorial service led by Brigadier Maurice Sheen, with words of reflection by Councillor Ian Dorr, Armed Forces champion, and the reciting of the Tony McNally poem Annabel by Isle of Wight Council leader Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox. Wreaths were also laid by Derek and Jill Anderson, whose son fought in the conflict. Councillor Dorr, himself a former soldier, said, "Today we came together and saluted the heroism of those from the Isle of Wight and all the other British forces who served in the Falklands War. Many from our island made huge sacrifices, and we must never forget the vital roles played by them and their families. We are forever in their debt for what they gave in the name of Queen and country, but also what they gave the residents and future generations of the Falklands Islands, a safe and secure environment in which to live." Councillor P.C. Wilcox added, "It's so important that we mark the anniversary so we can continue to educate future generations, thank many for their service and honour those who bravely gave their lives." Following the service, the council reconfirmed its commitment to supporting service personnel, veterans, war widows and their families with the re-signing of the Armed Forces Covenant. The Covenant is a pledge that organisations make to acknowledge and understand that those who serve or who have served in the armed forces and their families should be treated with fairness and respect in the communities and society they served with their lives. The document was signed by Councillor P.C. Wilcox and Commander Mel Robinson, CBE, ADC, RNR, Commander of the Maritime Reserves.
Southern Vectis could go under new management as takeover bids entertained. From the Island Echo, read by Lee. Go Ahead Group, the owner of Isle of Wight bus company Southern Vectis, has received 2 takeover bids which the company says it is minded to accept. Go Ahead has told its shareholders that it has received an unsolicited approach from a firm in Australia called Calcium. It has also been approached by a potential takeover by a consortium consisting of another Australian bus operator, Kinetic, and transport infrastructure company Global Via. Go Ahead Group, the largest supplier of double-decker buses in the United Kingdom, has not made the details of any approach known and has said that there can be no certainty that any offer will be accepted. A subsidiary of the parent firm Go South Coast is in charge of Southern Vectis and companies elsewhere in Hampshire, Wiltshire and Dorset. Shares in the parent transport firm Go Ahead surged by nearly a fifth after the takeover talks were confirmed. In a statement, Go Ahead has said, "The board of Go Ahead carefully evaluated the approaches from each of Calcium and the consortium together with its financial advisor, Rothschild & Co. The most recent revised proposals received from each of Calcium and the consortium are both at a level which, should a firm offer be made, the board of Go Ahead would be minded to recommend such a firm offer to Go Ahead shareholders, subject to the agreement of other customary terms and conditions."
This is Chris, reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Several new scam warnings issued for the Isle of Wight. a number of new scams have been issued for the Isle of Wight. COVID-19 scams. Trading Standards has received regular reports of texts allegedly from the NHS stating people have been in contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID and need to do a PCR test. You are told to click on a link to order one. Don't click on the link. This is a scam. There are no longer any restrictions or testing in place, and certainly no track and trace. Internet scam. Residents have reported calls from internet providers saying there is a problem with their broadband and the software needs updating. This will probably involve you allowing them access to your device, where the scammer will be able to harvest your information, possibly even access to your bank accounts. No internet provider would contact you with a problem. You have to contact them. Ofgem scam. Action Fraud has received 752 reports in 4 days relating to fake emails purporting to be from Ofgem. The emails state the recipient is eligible for a rebate as a result of a newly announced government scheme. The links in the emails lead to genuine-looking websites designed to steal your personal and financial information. Don't click on links in emails or texts. How to report scams. To report a scam, text forward the message to 7726. To report a scam email, forward the message to report@phishing, that's phishing.gov.uk. Scams can also be reported to Which, via Which, capital W, question mark, hyphen, scam sharer, both with capital S's. If you have lost money to a scam, your first port of call should be to your bank and Action Fraud.
This is Brian reading an article from the Island Echo. Luxury German kitchen brand set to open showroom in Newport. Kutschenhaus, the luxury German kitchen brand, is set to open its first store on the Isle of Wight. It has been revealed that the kitchen supplier will be opening a showroom at Coppins Bridge Leisure Park, joining the likes of Pizza Hut, Fever, Cineworld, Burger King and The Gym. The new Isle of Wight store will become part of a network of over 40 showrooms across the UK, stretching from Aberdeen to Exeter. It's unclear when exactly Kutschenhaus will open its doors, but it is known that the company will take occupancy of a 1,800 square foot unit between the former Maplin store and the entrance to The Gym. Kutschenhaus is part of Nobilia Kitchens, Europe's largest kitchen manufacturer. An application for signage has been submitted by SO Kitchens and Bathrooms Limited, based in Dorset.
Campaign to Save Victoria Seashore launched. From Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. A group of island residents have launched a campaign against plans to build 5 luxury houses, a fish processing factory and a retail facility on the seashore next to Yarmouth's Fort Victoria. Campaigners say the development cuts the council-managed beach in two, preventing the public from walking along the shoreline to and from this historical beauty spot. They also suggest it cuts right across the route for the proposed England Coastal Path, ECP. Local resident Fran Atkins said, "We agree people need new housing, but these luxury homes are not aimed at that need, and they are in the wrong place. After the floods in recent years, it would be madness to deliberately put future residents in harm's way." The campaigners say developers' proposed evacuation plan in the event of flooding is that the occupiers relocate to the top floor of the houses and await rescue by the emergency services. Those opposed to the move say it would be better not to build the luxury homes there in the first place. More information about the campaign to save Fort Victoria's seashore can be found online.
Plans to turn former bank into 4-bedroom townhouse deemed undesirable from the Island Echo, read by Lee. Plans to convert an empty bank on Sandown High Street into a 4-bedroom house are recommended for refusal by planning officers after the change of property use was deemed undesirable. The plan first came before the Isle of Wight Council last December when Mr. and Mrs. Concleton sought prior approval to transform the former Lloyds Bank into a family home. Officers on the planning committee refused the scheme and a full application was then submitted, showing changes to the internal layout but none externally. Councillor Ian Ward, the local member, supported the application, saying it was government policy to encourage empty buildings to be changed for residential use to stop the decline of high streets. Now the planning authority is once again saying the plan should be refused, but is leaving the decision up to the council's planning committee due to marginal and difficult policy issues. A report from officers advises the committee on the conflicting issues behind the application before they make the final decision. Planning policy in the Island Plan core strategy, which councillors will use to determine the application, seeks to preserve shops in town centres with council support for proposals that would contribute to their vitality and viability. Officers acknowledged the change of use would fill an empty building in the town centre, but considered it would result in an undesirable change, with the harm outweighing the benefit. They say the non-commercial use within a row of commercial properties would stop the free flow of pedestrians and have a potential impact on the viability of shops further along the high street. Officers also say the residential use of the ground floor would have a more permanent detrimental impact to the conservation area than the currently vacant unit and would not be in keeping with the prevailing pattern of development. There are also outstanding questions over financial contributions required of the developers relating to affordable housing and nitrate mitigation in the Solent, which officers say also adds further reasons for refusals. The committee will make their decision on the 21st of June.
This is Chris reading an article from the Island Echo. Court told 23-year-old broke into garage to steal fags as he was bored. A 23-year-old East Cowes man broke into a forecourt shop to steal cigarettes and a drink as he was bored, the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court heard on Tuesday. Damon Wilkins of Old Road in East Cowes was walking past Northwood Garage on the other side of the River Medina during the early hours of the 28th of May. The court heard that he was bored and decided he would rob the garage shop, taking cigarettes and a drink, despite being a non-smoker. Anne Smout, prosecuting, detailed that police were called to the business premises at 02:15 hours on the 28th when a burglar alarm was tripped. Officers arrived to find a window smashed but no suspect. The burglar was only caught when he presented himself at St Mary's Hospital some 3 hours later, with cuts to his arms. It is at the hospital that he admitted to a nurse that he had broken into the garage in Cowes. The hospital in turn alerted Hampshire Constabulary. In interview, Wilkins, accompanied by an appropriate adult, admitted to punching the glass until it broke. He pleaded guilty at the first opportunity to a single charge of burglary other than dwelling with intent to steal at Tuesday's court hearing. Defending, Oscar Vincent said his client is extremely vulnerable and suffers from severe learning difficulties as a result of his brain not developing fully. Mr. Vincent explained to the court that on the day of the incident, it was one of the first times his client had been outside unaccompanied since the COVID pandemic hit, having spent around 2 years indoors. It was also explained that the matter was a one-off incident and came at the same time that Wilkins had stopped taking medication. Taking into account the representations made, magistrates fined Wilkins £80 and ordered him to pay £543 compensation, £85 costs and a £34 surcharge.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Channel 5's The Hotel Inspector visits favourite ever hoteliers in Shanklin. Shanklin's Grace Ellie Hotel will feature on hit Channel 5 TV show The Hotel Inspector next week, and Alex Polizzi says the owners are her favourite hoteliers to date. Isle of Wight Radio was invited to have a sneak peek of the newly refurbished hotel back in April. It can now be revealed the major revamp was aided by none other than the hotel inspector Alex Polizzi. It was the first time the famous hotelier had visited the island, and speaking ahead of the episode airing, she said she loved it. She also revealed Grace Ellie's owners, father and daughter Philip and Kelly, are her favourite ever set of hoteliers. Alex Polizzi, who has hosted the show since 2008, said, "It's one of the few times I felt quite overwhelmed by emotion and love at the end, that I very nearly had to cry on film. They're a family who have worked incredibly hard and had a lot of personal tragedy, and even if they cannot overcome it, they live it with grace." I'd never been on the Isle of Wight before I was sent there for the hotel inspector, and I loved it. I would like to go there again. It was wonderful to be somewhere so different. In an attempt to turn the hotel's fortunes around, the episode, which airs on Thursday, sees Alex team up with Philip and Kelly. 12 years ago, Philip spent a pretty penny on the 50-bedroom hotel with a basement bar, restaurant, sun deck and pool. But with no prior experience running a hotel, over a decade later, it has only once made an annual profit. Philip, who is now 70, dreams of leaving the hotel to daughter Kelly and is determined to finally make it a success. Speaking at the hotel's launch event in April, Philip said the experience of filming was tough, but well worth it. He told Isle of Wight Radio, "You get a little bit nervous doing something you've never done before, so it's been quite tough, but what I will say is the team have been so nice. All of them are so friendly and patient. Sometimes I make jokes about things and can be quite annoying, but they don't show it, and as far as Alex goes, she's a diamond. She's been lovely and pulled us into the 21st century." The episode will air on Channel 5 next Thursday, 23rd of June at 9 p.m.
Festival goers to be treated to Red Arrows and Battle of Britain flypast this week. From Island Echo, read by Joyce. The famous Red Arrows and Battle of Britain memorial flight are set to delight Isle of Wight festival goers when they fly past Seaclose Park later this week. Like they have done for the last few years now, the Red Arrows will take to the skies above the festival site at around 6 p.m. on Friday the 17th of June. The display sits in between the main stage sets of Sigrid and Nile Rodgers and Chic. The RAF display team has become a regular attraction at the festival in recent years, and their appearance on Friday is sure to be an enjoyable watch once more. Often with their trademark Diamond 9 shape, the Red Arrows have been displaying since 1965, and by the beginning of 2022 had flown almost 5,000 displays in 57 countries. It is also known that the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight Team will also make an appearance above the Isle of Wight on Friday, although the time is yet to be confirmed.
Isle of Wight domestic abuser jailed for violent attacks from the Isle of Wight radio, read by Lee. A domestic abuser has been jailed for attacks on 2 women on the Isle of Wight. Ryan Hopewell, 21, of Sun Hill in Cowes, has been jailed for 71 weeks for the abuse he inflicted on 2 women between 2020 and 2022, with the most recent incident occurring on 5th of May this year. He was sentenced at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on Friday the 10th. Following his sentencing, Acting Detective Sergeant Ian Robertson said, "Domestic violence is an awful crime which sees people often psychologically and physically abused in their own home, a place where they should feel safe, and perpetrated by people who should ensure their safety. Hopewell is a particularly nasty and violent individual who embarked on a sustained campaign of violence against 2 women. One of the women suffered a fractured eye socket and a cut on her foot from broken glass as a result of one of his violent episodes. His behaviour was utterly shocking and he has rightfully been imprisoned because of those crimes. Domestic abuse is a priority for us, and we want victims to find the courage to tell us about this often unreported type of offending. I hope this case sends a message to our communities that we will never tolerate domestic abuse, and we will do all we can to work with victims and bring perpetrators to justice." Police have recently rolled out Project Foundation across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, which is in a partnership initiative alongside the Hampton Trust that aims to identify and manage the most dangerous perpetrators of physical and sexual violence in the community, offering them pathways to try and help to change their behaviour. The Hampton Trust are one of the most respected and innovative UK providers of work in the field of domestic abuse and criminal justice, and they also provide fantastic support to survivors of abuse. More details on their work and how to seek support can be found on their website, which is hamptontrust.org.uk.
This is Chris, reading an article from Island Echo. Midnight shop fire involving rubbish tackled by crews in Totland. Firefighters in the West Wight worked to fully extinguish and damp down a fire that broke out on the exterior of a shop in Totland during the early hours of Thursday morning. 2 appliances from Freshwater and Yarmouth, as well as the aerial ladder platform from Newport, were mobilised to Cost Cutter on Granville Road at just gone midnight. Reports had been received by the control room that a fire had broken out on the side of the shop. It has been confirmed by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service that the fire involved rubbish left on the ground down the side of the property. Flames licked up the outside of the building, causing damage to shop signage and a window frame on the first floor. Although the fire was out upon the arrival of crews, firefighters dampened down the area using hose reels before ventilating the property to clear lingering smoke. They also checked for any hot spots in the loft space. The stop message was relayed at 01:25 hours, with crews leaving the scene shortly afterwards.
This is Brian reading an item from Isle of Wight Radio. Islander 92 told to start end-of-life care after misdiagnosis via video link. A 92-year-old Islander was wrongly told she was dying of organ failure after an Isle of Wight GP misdiagnosed her via video link, a national report has found. The former NHS nurse, who has dementia and lives in a care home, was recommended to start end-of-life care following a diagnosis from a doctor at Cowes Medical Centre, the Telegraph reports. The report states she was recovering from COVID-19 at the time and her GP would not see her in person. Her son, Michael Gough Cooper from West Sussex, was apparently told the doctor was able to spot from the video that her skin was yellow. He told the Telegraph he was shocked to find out the GP never visited his mother in person and asked for them to call him and explain the assessment. Mr. Gough Cooper asked for a second opinion, only to be told his mother would have to go to A&E. The article states, eventually the 92-year-old was admitted to hospital overnight because the ultrasound department had closed after long delays. She was isolated alone in a single room because of her previous COVID diagnosis. An ultrasound the following day revealed she had no liver abnormalities, but staff noticed a history of gallbladder infection in her medical notes and decided to administer antibiotics. Following a 4-night stay at St Mary's Hospital, she was discharged and has now made a full recovery. Unhappy with the treatment his mother received, Mr. Gough Cooper has now submitted a formal complaint to the Care Quality Commission, CQC. He told the Telegraph, I feel that had we not had the second diagnosis, she would have been left to languish in the home and her condition would have deteriorated. A senior GP for the Cowes Medical Centre told the Telegraph, we are sorry to hear of the family's experience. When a patient, their relative or carer, shares concerns like this, we always offer to discuss the matter further. For our patients who are residents in care homes, we are in regular contact with the home throughout the week and always support patients if the care home raises a concern relating to their health.
Hello everyone, this is Kate.
And this is Mike.
So before we start the second part of the Talking News, here is this week's Society's news. Swimming is held every Monday at Medina Leisure Centre, Newport, between 1:30 and 2:30 p.m, and the charity has the whole use of the pool, and the cost is £5 plus transport if required. On Tuesday, we're having our Hat and Sunglasses Day, where we have encouraged all schools to take part by wearing a hat and/or sunglasses all day. And a video will be shown at the schools to promote avoidable sight loss.
Coffee and Chat is on every Wednesday at Millbrook House, 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. Only £1 for cake and coffee. Please come along for a chat and members of staff will be there for any assistance with equipment and information. Mix and Mingle is on every Thursday at Millbrook House, 10:30 a.m. until 2 p.m. This week's theme is a day at the beach. Advance warning for that this month's stride will be on July the 1st and details will be out this week to our Striders members. If you are interested in joining this group, please call the office for more details.
Now we go to news items. Tributes have been paid to a professor killed on the road. The University of York has paid tribute to Professor Simon McQueen Mason, who died in a crash on the island last week. On Sunday, June the 5th, Simon was involved in a crash in Shorewell, and police were called at around 10:15 a.m. with reports that a cyclist travelling on Main Road had collided with a Land Rover Freelander near the New Barn Lane junction. He was pronounced dead a short time later. The university has paid tribute to a brilliant creative scientist who was much loved by his group. Simon published 5 groundbreaking papers based on his discovery of plant cell wall modifying proteins, and his pioneering work formed the basis of a prestigious Royal Society fellowship. His love of travel made him passionate about using his skills to address environmental issues and global challenges. Simon was devoted to his family and is survived by his island-based partner Claire, former wife Florencia, and his children Ian and Sophia. The university said Simon was the chair of materials biology at the Centre for Novel Agricultural Products in the Department of Biology. His path to academia was unusual. He left school at 17 without any A-levels and worked as a professional fisherman, eventually owning his own boat, and the money he earned from fishing funded his passion for travel. He became curious about living systems in the natural world, particularly in the marine environment. This inspired him to write a letter to Portsmouth Polytechnic at the age of 26 and convinced them to offer him a place to study biological science. In 1987, Simon was offered a PhD position at Pennsylvania State University, publishing 5 groundbreaking papers. In 1994, Simon's career at the University of York began. Simon was eventually appointed to a chair in materials biology in 2001. Simon's love of travel made him passionate about using his skills to address environmental issues and global challenges, particularly climate change. He led international projects in Brazil, India, Philippines, Thailand and Vietnam. He directed 2 large EU consortia, had many international collaborators, and his relaxed manner put everyone at ease in his company. He was a brilliant creative scientist and was much loved by his group.
Plenty of chemists. Pharmaceutical needs are being met on the island now and in the next 3 years. At least that's what the Isle of Wight Council thinks. In a draft copy of the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment, PNA, the Council's Health and Wellbeing Board has come to that conclusion after looking at health factors, current population and predicted future need. The PNA is a report considered every 3 years, and the latest assessment has been in the making since September. It comes, though, as concerns about island pharmacies increase, with staff facing growing abuse from frustrated patients who are facing long waiting times for or going without essential medication. An incident in April saw the Boots pharmacy on Ventnor High Street lock its doors due to the abuse staff were facing. The PNA, once completed, will primarily be used by health officials to see where gaps in the services are, but through evaluation, the Council says there are none at least until 2025. The authority says the number of pharmacies, their geographical distribution, opening hours and choice of services currently meets the needs of the island population and into the future. They say a pharmacy is accessible to the majority of residents within a 5-mile drive and approximately around 1 pharmacy per 4,500 islanders. The average number of items dispensed in 2020-21, her pharmacy has also higher than the national average, with 100,110 items on the island compared to an average of 88,247 nationally. It equates to just over 8,340 items dispensed per pharmacy per month on the island. It is not the final version of the PNA, however, with the Council looking to hear feedback from the public before the report is officially approved and released in October later this year.
3 schools look to become academies. Some of the last secondary schools on the island, still in control of the Isle of Wight Council, could become academies. On Tuesday, the Isle of Wight Education Federation announced plans to consult on merging with the Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Southampton and Portsmouth Multi-Academy Trust. Parents of pupils at Carisbrooke College, Medina College and the Island Sixth Form received messages alerting them to a 5-week consultation period where they can have their say. The governors will make the final decision on July the 18th. Now, this Hampshire Trust consists of 3 Hampshire schools and another 2 are also consulting about joining. The Island Federation stated, during the past 12 months, governors decided to explore ways to further secure the education offer children have available through the island schools. It was after a careful consideration and analysis of many potential future pathways that the Hampshire Trust was selected as the best route and fit. The Hampshire Trust provides the perfect balance of having a highly regarded region-wide school improvement network, providing high-quality staff development opportunities, whilst supporting and encouraging the schools in their learning community to maintain their own curriculum and identity. The Hampshire Trust's vision and ethos is very closely aligned with that of the Federation. The executive head teacher of the Island Group, Matthew Parr-Berman, said, "We have come a very long way over the past 4.5 years and are increasingly proud of the schools we have become and are developing into. We continue to focus on the delivery of education, and the wider experiences available can be even more dynamic and secure by joining with the Hampshire Trust. The day-to-day operational leadership and staffing structures will remain unchanged. Academy schools are state-funded schools with higher degrees of autonomy and governance, use of resources and curriculum. They must follow the same rules on admissions, special educational needs and exclusions as other maintained schools, and students sit the same exams. Academies are also inspected by Ofsted. The consultation will run until 3:30 p.m. on July the 15th. Peter Shreve, Assistant District Secretary of the National Educational Union, said the move was regrettable and already causing anxiety among union members. He said staff are obviously stunned at this announcement. They had no idea this was a potential move. Councillor Cameron Palin, Vice Chair of the Isle of Wight Green Party, said his party would be resisting the move.
90 weapons are taken off streets. A firearms amnesty has been deemed a success by police, taking deadly weapons off the streets of Hampshire and the island. Hampshire Constabulary say 90 unlicensed firearms no longer have the potential to fall into the hands of criminals, following the successful response to Operation Aztec, run recently in both counties. The force supported a national firearms surrender campaign to remove unlicensed weapons from communities and prevent them being used for criminality. In addition to the potentially viable firearms, there were 50 lots of ammunition surrendered. In total, 215 items which included shotguns, BB guns, air weapons, imitation firearms, ammunition, and even a tranquilizer dart, were handed into the police stations between May the 12th and the 29th. The haul included what appeared to be an MI6 assault rifle, 2 pump-action shotguns, an AK-47 replica, and an unusual walking stick shotgun. No breakdown of what was recovered on the island was available.
There is a mountain to climb to solve the Isle of Wight housing crisis. That was the warning from the councillor in charge of housing, as he said the current delivery model had ground to a halt and does not work. The council's executive was criticised for not building affordable housing at a time when nearly 2,500 island families are in most need of a home. At a meeting of the Isle of Wight Council's Corporate Scrutiny Committee on Tuesday, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Homeless, Councillor Ian Stevens, reflected on the dire state of the island's housing crisis. It comes as figures from the authority reveal the average price of a new build property has almost doubled in the last 12 years, jumping from £189,742 in 2010 to £373,663 in January this year. A council report concluded that at the current prices and wages islanders receive, 83.2% of residents could not afford a new build home on the open market. Councillor Stevens said the ray of light of modular housing that Cabinet agreed to take forward last October had not progressed. He said, "I thought we were going to make an impression with this, but it has lost traction and ground to a halt." Members of the committee, however, felt they had no answers on delivering affordable housing. Councillor Stevens said the system currently in place did not work. He hoped through a cabinet reshuffle and reorganisation it would make a more robust housing unit in the council. Tory leader Councillor Joe Robertson said he was not convinced it was a structural problem but a delivery one, since the council had a housing company created by the previous Conservative administration which remains dormant. The council also approved the borrowing of £40 million to start building houses in its budget. Chris Ashman, Regeneration Director, said it was a problem for both recent administrations and that the strategy approved in 2020 still had the right tools to deliver. Councillor Robertson, however, said it was a considerable embarrassment to the council that it was halfway through the 5-year strategy and all they could agree was there was a crisis that was tough to solve. The matter will be discussed further, as councillors were not happy with the lack of answers.
Doctor Who lands on the island. Doctor Who was spotted on the island, or rather one of the actors who formerly played the character. Paul McGann, famous for portraying the 8th incarnation of the Doctor, was filming on our shores this week. The 62-year-old is involved in a project with Kerry Taylor, best known for her role in ITV family drama, Where the Heart Is. It's been great working with these two great actors over the past couple of days on the island, announced Film Wight, which promotes the Isle of Wight for film, TV and photographic projects. More details about what we were filming is to come in the next few days.
An endangered stag beetle was spotted at Fort Victoria. It's the UK's largest land beetle and one of its most endangered. The stag beetle, also known as Lucanus cervus and classed as a priority species, is native to Britain and has an average lifespan of 3 to 7 years. Graham Chubb sent in his brilliant photos of the beetle he spotted at Fort Victoria Country Park in Yarmouth. Weighing in at around 4 grams, a male can reach 7.5 centimetres in length, which includes the mandibles and jaws, and females are around 5 centimetres. Adult stag beetles do not eat, but they do drink sweet fluids, such as liquid from decomposing fruit and tree sap. They spend most of their life underground as larvae, only emerging for a few weeks during summer to find a mate and reproduce. Due to its endangered status, wildlife charity People's Trust for Endangered Species has called on islanders to record sightings of these spectacular-looking creatures as part of an ongoing study.
Ellen to compete in Round the Island race. This is sailing round the island. Dame Ellen MacArthur is set to sail alongside young people supported by her cancer charity in this year's Round the Island race. Ellen, who founded the Ellen MacArthur Cancer Trust in 2003, has been the official charity of the event since 2005, raising more than £308,270 to date to help inspire young people aged 8 to 24 years with cancer. This year, Round the Island race is on Saturday, June the 25th. Ellen last did the Round the Island race with a crew of young people in 2018. This year, up to 30 young people who have all previously sailed with the Trust after cancer treatment will race the 50 nautical mile course on 5 boats, bidding to get the Round the Island bragging rights. I am really excited to be taking part in this year's Round the Island race and sailing with young people the Trust supports again, said Ellen. The Round the Island race is such an amazing event to be involved in, and for the young people to be at the centre of the action, enjoying the sights, the spectacle and the racing is an experience to remember.
Students from the Isle of Wight College's Uniformed Services course have been helping out with the work to improve East Cowes Esplanade. A 3-month project to restore access to the popular Esplanade area is underway after landslips in 2014 and 2018 meant part of the beachfront had to be closed. Following community fundraising and support, the island-based contractor John Peck Construction was appointed to stabilise the soft slopes with rock baskets and install new seating along the promenade. Students from the Isle of Wight College joined them to learn about the project and help build new structures. Student Hayley McFarland said, "I feel like this work will really help the community in East Cowes. The new area will bring more people down here because it's easy to get to and it's a nice view." Councillor Sharon Lake of East Cowes Town Council said, "The community has been vocal for a number of years regarding improving the accessibility and the visual appearance of this much-loved area. I am pleased Phase 1 has finally come to a successful conclusion." Councillor Carl Love said, "I'm pleased some of the island's young people have come forward to lend a hand with help from the Isle of Wight College, and I'm grateful to John Peck Construction for taking the time to work with the students."
Pond expert handed restraining order. An Arraton man gave a customer advice about her pond, then harassed her with visits and on social media, a court heard. He has now been given a restraining order. Matthew North initially visited the victim's home on business on behalf of a local aquatics firm to provide advice about her pond, but after she had agreed to be a Facebook friend with him, he began to send messages. It was not long before they rang alarm bells with her. Isle of Wight magistrates were told on his previous court appearance last month. The victim subsequently unfriended him on Facebook, but North continued to harass her. He turned up uninvited to her house with equipment for her pond, then returned the next day and stood on her doorstep for some time. North also set up a dummy Instagram account in a woman's name, adding all her friends so he could follow her, and he matched her on a dating site. North's victim asked him to leave her alone and threatened to inform the police if he persisted. North, who admitted harassment without violence between July the 2nd last year and March the 20th, admitted his action in a police interview. At his previous hearing, his solicitor, Jim Osborne, said his client believed he had a chance of forming a relationship with the victim and had not intended to cause her harm. Magistrates handed North a 12-month restraining order with a year's probation to include 100 hours unpaid work, £85 cost, and a £95 surcharge.
An islander has spoken to the county press of her heartbreak after thefts from her dad's grave. Shell Alfie is calling for cameras to be installed, but the Isle of Wight Council insists that that is not the answer. Since her father died in December, the family have marked the grave in Ryde Cemetery with ornaments, flowers and lights, but items have been taken, damaged or moved. The worry has led them to take regular walks to check the grave is untouched as they continue to deal with their loss. Roses were stolen from a vase, and small ornamental windmills and solar lights have disappeared as recently as last month. Shell said, "I am angry and sad. It is absolutely disgusting and heartbreaking. My brother has recently put a cross there and it's been loosened already. Ornaments from other graves have also been moved around. It has made them too nervous to buy items to place on the grave." Calling for the installation of CCTV and tighter security, Shell said, "I feel sick and so upset that anyone can be so evil to do such a thing. No one seems to care." The Isle of Wight Council, which runs Ryde Cemetery, says the thefts are regrettable, but does not believe extra surveillance is the answer. A spokesperson said, "The council works with other agencies, including the police and local councils if necessary, to keep public spaces safe and secure for everyone. The thefts from Ryde Cemetery are regrettable, and this is unfortunately something that does from time to time occur. As staff are aware of the concerns raised and will be mindful of these issues when making their inspection visits. The problems are made worse," says Shell, "because of the amount of dog mess at the site." The council said environment officers have been able to issue fixed penalty notices for dogs off the lead in cemeteries and to owners who do not clean up after them. It insists officers are making regular visits.
Whitelink slammed for no cash payment policy. Residents have slammed Whitelink for its refusal to accept cash payments for its services over concerns for the vulnerable and elderly who may not have an alternative payment method. A number of residents from around the island have contacted the county press in recent weeks, expressing their dissatisfaction with the new policy. The Cross Solent operator says the decision was made 2 years ago to protect its customers and staff from the spread of COVID-19 through cash handling. "I actually can't believe it," said 78-year-old Paul Logan of Ryde. "I have a bank card, but this is a matter of strong principle concerning all residents. It's shocking, it's ridiculous. They told me they only accept a bank card. Nobody refuses cash. If buses wanted a bank card from everybody who goes 1 or 2 stops, it's going to cause bedlam. I've cross-checked with Hover Travel and they said, of course we accept cash." It's the particular concern for the elderly and the vulnerable. Imagine if an old lady going to Portsmouth for treatment hasn't got her card, gets to the pier head and is turned away. A spokesperson for the ferry company said, "Whitelink welcomes payment by credit and debit cards through the website and smartphone app, at ticket machines and by smartphone systems such as Apple Pay. Many customers use contactless payment cards and devices which are quick and convenient and reduce queuing times. Over the last 2 years, Whitelink has received fewer than 30 complaints about this policy. Steve Stiles of Portsmouth told the county press, "Back in April, I had gone to Whitelink's Portsmouth Harbour ticket office with the plan to purchase a day return ticket to Ryde. I waited to pay cash, but was told they don't accept cash. All my life, good old-fashioned cash has been accepted, but now I found it's not good enough for some, and I'm treated like there's something wrong with me for even asking to make a payment by cash. I have no problem if people wish to pay by card, but what about choice?" He went to Bournemouth instead.
Ventnor Gaiety fire. Police say they have ruled out arson and third-party involvement in the fire at the former Gaiety Amusements Arcade in Ventnor. The fire took hold on Tuesday night last week, and firefighters spent 9 hours putting the blaze out. Police at first confirmed the fire was being treated as arson, but 2 days later they said following an investigation it is no longer being treated as such. A spokesperson for Hampshire Constabulary said, "We have been working alongside our partners in the fire service to investigate the fire which occurred at an arcade in Ventnor on June the 7th. Following a number of inquiries, including speaking to witnesses in the area and reviewing CCTV footage, no evidence of third-party involvement has been identified, and this is no longer being investigated as an arson." The owners of the site had recently begun work to turn the derelict seafront property into a home for themselves, but despite having planning permission to demolish the entire building, had been working to keep the iconic dome structure. They said they were just so very saddened by this latest setback and thanked everyone who helped during the blaze.
Housing the homeless after the Second World War. Recently, Historic England has put many aerial photographs taken in 1949 online. Often these show the areas that received damage from bombing during the Second World War. In only a few cases have rebuilding started on the cleared bomb sites. Some island towns suffered badly in the Second World War, and many houses were uninhabitable for several years. Compensation payments were made by the government. A small percentage was given immediately to provide covering to make the buildings watertight and habitable. Further payment came after the war was over. Complications arose where the owners of a property had died. Many bomb sites were left empty, some until after 2000. In 1944, the government held a rehousing exhibition in London. One of the exhibits was a steel-framed fabricated bungalow developed by the national firm Arcon. This was easily erected on a prepared concrete base. It came ready with every last nut and bolt required. Soon after the war, the island's council chose to install 60 of these prefabs at Cowes, 45 at East Cowes, 12 in Newport, and 50 in Ryde. In Cowes and East Cowes, German prisoners of war from local camps worked to lay the concrete foundations. They also created the road systems required. Many of the prisoners became friends with the local population, attending the local churches. The Arcon fabricated bungalow was much appreciated by the many families who moved into them. The kitchen had many conveniences not readily available to the general public just after the war, and even a refrigerator. The building was created around a core of services, which included a stove with a back boiler providing hot water and ducted warm air to the 2 bedrooms. All the rooms had built-in cupboards. The prefabs had Crittall metal-framed windows. The families did find quite a lot of condensation occurred. but this was the same in most houses at the time, when single glazing was the norm. The 1949 aerial photographs show the extent of the completed Arkon estate on the island. When Cowes Urban District Council was amalgamated into Medina Borough Council, the Clerk of Works saved an Arkon erection manual from disposal. The manual has recently been given to East Cowes Heritage. It adds to part of our island history, as those temporary bungalows lasted more than 50 years. For ease of construction, the Arkon bungalows were put up on greenfield sites, giving quick housing to many families without homes. The expansion of council brick-built housing onto greenfield sites had already begun pre-war and continued in the 1950s. Today, we hope that brownfield and infill sites will be the sites that should be developed first, rather than taking more farmland and increasing the area of our towns and villages. Brownfield sites are more difficult and costly for developers, so perhaps there should be an incentive to encourage their use.
A landscape gardener who skidded on an icy road and crashed through a garden wall was 4 times the drug drive limit after taking cocaine and cannabis. Todd Eldridge admitted 2 counts of drug driving on Newport Road near the junction with Red Hill Lane, Godshill, on January the 21st. Police attended a traffic accident involving 2 cars, one of them Eldridge's, which bizarrely crashed through the same garden wall independently, said Adam Smout, prosecuting at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court. The 2 accidents were not connected. In a roadside drug test, the 25-year-old of Mantfield Road, Wroxall, tested positive for cocaine, was arrested and admitted he also smoked cannabis most evenings as well to help him sleep. For Eldridge, Oscar Vincent said his client had taken the drugs 4 days before the accident and he felt fine to drive. He was banned from driving for 16 months with a year's probation, 50 hours unpaid work, £85 costs and a £95 victim surcharge.
Man faces multiple violence charges. An island man has been charged with a number of violent offences. Bruno Borges, aged 34, of Queen's Road, Shanklin, was charged with multiple offences, including actual bodily harm, assault, and criminal damage. Relating to an incident on June the 9th, where it is alleged he assaulted a woman known to him on a bus to his cows, resulting in the woman suffering a chipped tooth, Borges has been charged with assault occasioning actual bodily harm. He has also been charged with assault by beating after it was alleged the assaulted woman at an address on Queen's Road on May the 12th. Borges has also been charged with criminal damage of a mobile phone and 4 counts of assaulting police officers on Queen's Road on May the 12th. He appeared at Southampton Magistrates Court on Saturday when he was remanded further and will next appear at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on July the 11th.
The construction of a new 2-storey cafe restaurant is making good progress at Totland Pier. The construction up to shell and core level is expected to be completed during the summer. Set over 2 levels at the end of the pier, the restaurant will be capable of catering for 120 customers inside and 100 outside. The 140-metre pier had undergone a multi-million-pound renovation, restored where possible and replaced where not. The pier head has been largely replaced with steel piles and platforms to take the new building, and the whole structure has been reboarded in oak or elm to retain its Victorian heritage, whilst being capable of lasting another 100 years.
2 faced kill threat charges. 2 men have appeared in court charged with making threats to kill in Newport. It follows an incident at an address in St John's Road last Friday evening. Following inquiries, Joshua Parker, formerly of Culver Parade, Sandown, was charged with making threats to kill and racially aggravated common assault. Luke Thorpe, aged 31, of Arnold Road, Cowes, was charged with making threats to kill. On Monday, they were remanded to appear at the Isle of Wight Crown Court on July the 26th.
And now we'll move on to White Memories. This is remembering the assistance and humour of the island's last governor. The island, throughout its history, always had some form of governor, and the final governor was Lord Louis Mountbatten. Unfortunately, this tradition ended following his assassination by the IRA. During his appointment as governor, he would be a frequent visitor, attending various ceremonies and quite often accompanying other members of royalty. David White, who wrote the article, said, "During this period I was regularly involved in photographing him, either for press or magazine publications, and in doing so we became on talking terms. So I will mention a few little harmless and amusing scenarios regarding our working association. Lord Louis, the royal celebrity, and me, the young, pushy and cheeky press photographer. The working relationship, believe it or not, worked quite well. I knew when to get the picture without interrupting his duties, and in turn he was very helpful to me in getting my photos. One incident happened when he made a visit to Ventnor Botanic Garden. I'd been asked by a magazine client if I could possibly obtain a portrait of Lord Louis. So waiting with bated breath, I chose the moment in which to ask his military aide if he would ask Lord Louis if he would oblige. Straight away Lord Louis left his official duties and approached me regarding my request. So in order that I could obtain a suitable picture away from the crowds, I suggested that we go into the Palm Garden, which at the time was completely deserted. This we did, and I proceeded to prepare taking the shot. Back then it involved me taking a light reading. During my preparation we were exchanging some light humour, and in his typically amusing way Lord Louis quipped, "Come on, shoot me, and finish the whole job off." I replied cheekily, "I could now, couldn't I?" To which I got the reply, coupled with a big chuckle, "Afraid not, you would never get away with it, too many people know you." I replied, "I'm afraid, sir, you might be right," and laughed. During the shoot I suggested he pull the trilby hat he was wearing lower down over his forehead, hinting that I thought it gave him that special look, more like some of the previous kings. What a great sense of humour he had, because during the performance of his official opening duty and speech, he deliberately pulled his hat down over his forehead, giving me a slightly amusing look.
Another occasion demonstrated his thoughtfulness. It was during his accompanying the Queen Mother on her official visit to the island. Again, I covered the visit for the press, plus a magazine. But I found it difficult to capture a photo of her face actually looking at my camera. It was also proving hard to find an opening where she was not surrounded by officials, all wanting their little bit of glory. So when I got the chance, I asked Lord Louis if he could help, and his reply was, "Just stand there, be ready with your camera, and I will see what I can do." Hey presto, he took the Queen Mother's arm and obviously whispered for her to turn for a photograph, and I got my photo. In fact, to prove the point, I managed to quickly get the photo of Lord Louis directing her to look towards my camera. Mountbatten was known for his liking of punctuality. On one occasion I had been waiting outside of County Hall in Newport. While waiting I was talking to his police motorcyclist escort. Upon the emergence of Lord Louis, the policeman issued instructions to me not to delay him by taking too long over photographing Lord Mountbatten. While taking my photos, Lord Louis said to me, I saw you talking to the police escort. So what do you fellows talk about when waiting around? I replied, telling him that I had been instructed not to take long over my picture taking, and added that you, sir, I was instructed, required punctuality. Lord Louis grinned and nodded, and just quietly said, "Oh." Upon getting into the official car, he turned to his policeman escort, saying rather sharply, "Please, make sure we can go on time, Mr." Then sitting in the car, he looked at me and gave me a wide grin. One could write of many more stories regarding Lord Mountbatten and his humour, and also of some of the brief dialogue we had. With his death, the island sadly lost a valuable and irreplaceable champion.
We move on to My View, this week by Jim Gibbons, who talks of the crazy world of British politics. In 1948, the government nationalised the coal mines. I was a boy of 11 at the time. Before you say it, yes, dinosaurs did rule the earth. They were to grow bigger and more powerful later. And I was living within 10 miles or so of the Durham coalfields, so this was a big issue, as well as national news. The cinema newsreels, no television for us then, were full of it, and so were the newspapers and what we called the wireless. Around every pit head, cheering and rejoicing miners were proclaiming, "The mines are ours, we own the pits." Politicians attended and joined in the euphoria. Not one of those politicians was brave enough to sound a cautionary note, or if there was, it was not reported. No one said to the rejoicing miners, "Yes, you own the coal mines, but not only you. They have been purchased for the general good and are owned by you, the miners." They have been purchased for the general good and are owned by you, the miners, and by the fishermen, the farmers, the factory workers, the clerks and shopkeepers, and the unemployed. The dukes and dustmen are shareholders, and so the seed was inadvertently sown, the idea that the mines were to be run for the benefit of the miners alone. Later, this was stretched to include the belief that the miners were entitled to prevent the movement of coal from one site to another, even coal which had been bought and paid for by the mine industry's customers. When Mrs. Thatcher was chosen to lead the Conservatives, the trade unions were the de facto rulers of the country. Successive Prime Ministers tried half-heartedly to reduce their power. Harold Dawson said, "Get your tanks off my lawn, Hughie," to Hugh Scanlon, but the tanks remained. Having tried persuasion, again, Mrs. Thatcher did the job that had to be done, while the miners' leaders shamefully encouraged them to throw missiles at the police, who were only doing their duty. The invasion of the Falkland Islands was the result of years of diplomatic failure, leading to the Argentine governments believing we would not fight for them. If we had not done so, we would have lost all credibility in the eyes of the world. Mrs. Thatcher made mistakes, but in the two great challenges of her time in leadership, she acted decisively, proportionately, and rightly. Her reward in life was to be persuaded by her inferiors to resign. Her reward after death was to have her statue refused a place in one of the capital's great squares and to have it defaced when erected in her hometown. My question this month is, who said it's a funny old world on November the 22nd, 1990? In my last article, I asked who said politics is too important to be left to politicians. That was Charles de Gaulle.
Celebrating Ventnor. Ventnor Day on July the 2nd promises to be bigger and better than ever and will be held at Ventnor Park for 12 noon to 6 p.m. Artists booked to perform include the Ventnor Darlings, Greg and the Bears, the Hillmans, the Slow Cats, Moonshine Border, Andy Roberts, Beth and John, Tink Beadle and Ventnor Theatre Group. Also attending is Ventnor Comic Jazz Band with their first hometown performance since their recent successful appearance in the Queen's Platinum Jubilee pageant. Mayor of Ventnor, Steph Toogood, who is opening the event, said, "Ventnor Day showcases the best of our town, from our rich and diverse voluntary and community organisations to our artists and crafters, and some of our most popular musicians and food outlets. It's a great day out for all ages in the picturesque setting of Ventnor Park and Putting Green, and a chance to raise funds for Ventnor Carnival."
The Isle of Wight Armed Forces Day is set for July the 2nd. It will be held on Saturday, July the 2nd in Newport. Chairwoman of the Isle of Wight Council, Councillor Claire Critchinson, said, "Armed Forces Day is a key date in the UK and the Isle of Wight's calendar, where we really get to show our gratitude for those involved with the armed forces. This is the day when we, on the island, can show our patriotic support for our service personnel, past and present, throughout the country, thanking them for keeping us safe." County Show.
Now here is information about the County Show, which is also termed the Royal Isle of Wight County Show. Kids go free entry for under 16s with a paying adult. And it's on next weekend. So we look forward to that one. The Cantata Choir, 7:30 p.m. on Saturday the 25th of June 2022 at Ryde Methodist Church. Ryde PO 33 2PT. Gloria, which written by Vivaldi, Zadok the Priest by Handel, I Was Glad by Parry, The Lily and the Rose, Chilcot. Tickets are £10 and the telephone number is 07760 852 074.
Classic cars are heading to Ryde. The 21st Isle of Wight Charity Classic Car Extravaganza will be held on Ryde Esplanade on September the 3rd and 4th. Organiser Victor Galucci is proud to announce the coming of age of his highly successful two-day car show, held over this first weekend of September. The show has grown into a massive international event over the last 2 decades, attracting around 1,000 retro, classic and historical vehicles from all over mainland Britain, Europe and beyond. The show is free to the public and held in support of the Isle of Wight Round Table and Mountbatten Hospice. And last but not least, the Isle of Wight Jazz Weekend is back this September. The event director Jim Thorne said plans for 2020 were well underway when the world shut down. It is only now that we're returning to a sense of normality, and we took the decision to put the event back to September for this year so that we could review how things were returning to normal. Music events since the pandemic have been well attended, and there is a clear audience demand for a return to live music. This will be our 10th year, and we have a great lineup ready. There's something included for all tastes, and I'm looking forward to welcoming jazz fans old and new back to the island for a weekend of great musical entertainment. The venues include the Apollo Theatre, Key Arts and Newport Methodist Church, and a number of fringe events are planned around the town, including at the Bargeman's Rest, Cafe Isola and number 1 Holyrood. Now we move on to letters.
Questionable ethics. Dear Editor, Boris Johnson was apparently surprised that his respected ethics advisor, Lord Geidt, resigned this week. the second to go in less than 2 years. Bob Seeley quickly appeared on Robert Preston's TV show to say he just couldn't understand it, and it was time to move on and get back to serious politics. Now the truth is out. Boris Johnson, the man our MP voted for to remain in post as Prime Minister despite being a proven serial liar, was asked to approve a deliberate and purposeful breach of the ministerial code. Lord Guide loyally served our Queen for 10 years as her private secretary. What a shock it must have been to have suddenly been surrounded by men like Johnson and Seeley and their tenuous grasp of right and wrong. I wish him a happy retirement. That letter's from R. Taylor of Newport.
Joe McCall Shaw of Freshwater tells us the truth about cash versus card. I read the letter about a chap visiting Bournemouth rather than the Isle of Wight. The issue actually is not now even cash versus card, but contactless versus PIN card. I was on the way home from Sheffield in a cross-country train on the second leg from Birmingham to Southampton. The tea trolley came, I offered cash. This was refused, and I was asked if I had a card. I did, but only my business card with PIN, and he refused that too. Fortunately, he'd already poured, so I got a freebie. On the red jet coming home, I sat with a mum and young family. The little boy wanted crisps, £1.25, and they would not take cash. Fortunately, the little lad didn't scream the place down. The disadvantaged run by cash. It's the only effective way to budget and tally. Our cash is legal tender, and the banks make on every transaction they make. We are paying for that privilege. Not connected, but where's my direct train to the north?
Touché, sir. This is from Councillor Vanessa Churchman, Haylands and Swanmore. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. The letter writer commenting on me in the County Press of the 3rd of June this year joined the Lib Dems, but in 2013-17 he was elected as an independent councillor of the Isle of Wight Council. He was part of the ruling group that commissioned and took delivery of the ill-fated Cowes floating bridge. Unfortunately, the Conservatives, when elected in May 2017, inherited this colossal white elephant and were unjustly accused for next 4 years of being responsible for its failure. A report has been published within the last month detailing the faults in our planning department. Yet again, part of the problem with planning is down to the decimation of planning officers during 2013-17, which has left the council with an enormous backlog of cases, even though the Conservatives increased the staffing levels after 2017. Mr. Blessel, as a councillor, was chair of planning for a period, and I would like to know if he takes or shares responsibility for the cuts to staffing levels in this department. Further, during 2016-17, the leader and deputy leader of the ruling group resigned and declined to set a lawful budget for the coming financial year. It took Dave Stewart to form a Conservative-led coalition to pull the council together and set a budget for 2017-18. If this had not happened, then the government would have put in their own administrators to sort out the finances. Is it any wonder I did not want to be associated with the Independence Alliance group? But, of course, what Bob failed to mention is that he stood as a Lib Democrat candidate in the 27 election. Touché.
Mark Winter of Ryde says the Puckpool building plan should be refused. He says, I have lived on Puckpool Hill for nearly 70 years. My parents bought Thornton Cottage, where I still live, in 1953 when it was in a fairly primitive state. It was listed as Grade 2 in the 1970s. While we have made several improvements to it over the years, we have always been careful to follow the inspiration of the architect, almost certainly Stephen Salter, in the 1820s to 1840s. We don't know exactly, as no records exist. Naturally, I love living here. The house is now threatened by a densely packed housing estate on the other side of our garden fence. This would, of course, threaten the setting of the cottage. When I was a child, the land was used as a pasture and then was bought by the council and was used for football and rugby. At some point, the council sold the land to Warner's, later Harcourt Sands holiday camp. When the holiday camp collapsed, one of the directors bought the whole site for a relatively small sum. As far as I know, it never came onto the open market. He is now developing 128 houses on the main Harcourt Sands site, a so-called brownfield site. He now wants to develop the playing field as well. For many years, the playing field was used by guests of the holiday camp, but it was also widely used by local residents at other times for dog walking, blackberrying, football and golf. Aware that development was likely, I tried to get the land listed as a village green, but was defeated at a hearing by a leading QC in land law. Truly a David and Goliath concept, as I am not a lawyer. Since then, the landowner has closed the land to access by locals and has allowed it to grow wild with brambles and the like. Despite this, wildlife has thrived, with sightings of buzzards, dormice, bats and badgers. We are told that there is a pressing need for more houses, though details of local demand are hard to come by. But we already have Pennyfeathers, Westridge Farm and Harcourt Sands developments coming along in the area, adding a further 1,500 homes. Surely that is enough. Puckpool Hill would coalesce the Ryde and Seaview settlements, devastate wildlife and produce much traffic congestion on a road not served by buses. Local residents are solidly against the plan. The council's planning committee should reject this plan as deeply flawed.
I wanted a peaceful retirement. Dear Editor, my family were islanders. I'm retiring from teaching. I finally managed to settle back on my island. I bought a small converted stable in a quiet square, a designated dark skies area. I overlook treetops of mature fruit trees of the garden of the big house. Private, ideal, until the big house was bought by rich second home owners from London. A year and a half of very noisy building work took place. The small garden in which my cottage backed onto was turned into treeless, concreted, bedecked resort with open-air heated pool, hot tub and barbecue area, all brightly lit. I now overlook a 15-foot fence. Residents dread the owners, or those to whom they let, coming. There is noise and bright lights, day and night in all weathers. We can hear every word, every scream from children splashing in the pool, every adult conversation from the hot tub. Even laying in bed late at night you can hear them. Plus, they often leave several lights on all night. It is surely not appropriate that second homeowners be allowed to dominate a quiet residential area. I cannot afford to move and dread the next 10 years or so of my age. Surely the island does not need tourists like this. That totally discombobulate local residents. But what can be done? I feel so helpless. The rich man in the castle, the poor woman at his gate, forced to endure the intrusion. It is just so close. That letter is from Dr. Wayne of Freshwater Bay.
Now, competing priorities are difficult, says S. Reid of Ryde. Dear Editor, over 260 migrants were rescued from the English Channel on just one day, last Tuesday, June the 14th. About 8,000 came during 2020 and over 28,000 came last year. That's more people than live in Newport. Still more smuggle in by other illegal routes, such as in the back of lorries. There's a massive hidden number of people coming and living here, and those numbers are just the ones we know about. Net migration, including both legal and illegal migrants, after accounting for those that move out of the UK, to June last year was almost 240,000. That's almost the population of Southampton moving to the UK in a single year. Many of those people will not speak English as a first language. Some will have arrived with complex medical problems, and many will need additional help and support to settle. Every year we need more schools, hospitals, GPs and jobs, even before addressing the needs of the current population. It's little wonder the government is having so much trouble balancing all these competing priorities. And now that is the end of the second part of the Talking News, so it's goodbye from Kate.
And it's goodbye from Mike. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
The In Touch programme follows, and the Scufting News follows that. In Touch, the new Elizabeth line. Do you see what I see? London's new £18.9 billion Elizabeth line has recently opened, with travellers now able to go from Abbey Wood to Heathrow and Reading, and from Shenfield to Heathrow. We went to find out about the line's access features with Clive Wood of the charity Guide Dogs. Clive was offering advice and guidance on the accessible design of the new line, and he believes there is more that can be done to ensure full accessibility. So he put his concerns to the TfL's Chief Customer Officer, Mark Evers. We also travelled down to South London to an exhibition at the Outlined Gallery called Do You See What I See? It is an exhibition that showcases the interpretations of how partially sighted people with various conditions see and experience art.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. It's pretty obvious that if you want the built environment to be accessible for disabled people, by far the best way is to put the right features in from the ground up. But it's not often that you get the chance to do that. However, at the 40 plus stations which make up the Elizabeth line, which crosses London from west to east, they have had that opportunity. So how well have they grasped it? Well, I'm here on Tottenham Court Road station in the Elizabeth line part of the station to find out. Later in the programme, we're going to be visiting the art gallery just a few miles to the south of here, down in Wandsworth, where visually impaired people have been collaborating with professional artists to give people an idea of what the world looks like to them. But first, I'm joined by Clive Wood of the Guide Dogs campaign team, who's been involved in the business of trying to provide consistent features for blind and partially sighted travellers on the Elizabeth line. So, Clive, first of all, what kind of features are we talking about?
The stations are like cathedrals, actually. They're massive, they've got high ceilings, they're very open and airy, they've got good lighting in them. There's step-free access from all 41 stations, from street to platform, which is wonderful. And that's not just for people with mobility issues, that's also for other passengers, including blind and partially sighted people who prefer not to use an escalator, or who have got a guide dog who isn't trained to use an escalator. We think that's really positive.
So what is less positive, if you like? What haven't they done? Because, I mean, they've spent £19 billion on it, so you might expect that they could have done just about everything with that.
When Transport for London have taken on Elizabeth line from Crossrail. It's handed over to them as a project. There were some things such as signage. We don't think that there's enough wayfinding that's going to allow people with a sight loss to be able to navigate round the stations, because they are enormous, and we'd like to see some good tactile being used at the entrances to the train, because they have a big glass screen that blocks you off from the line. So when the train comes in, those screens, doors open, but it's very difficult to know where they are unless you actually can see. So it's a bit of a guess. You have to hang around and listen to see where those entrances are. The colour contrast on the trains isn't great, so you can't see, if you've got some vision, the handrails, the grab rails, which is really important. And the one other thing that would have been really lovely and would have helped a lot of people with sight loss is knowing which side the doors are going to open when they come into a platform.
Right. Well, that could be done with announcements, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just training, isn't it?
The announcements are automated, so they can be made to make that announcement. I think there was a concern from Transport for London that if they have too much information, because the stops are very close to each other, that might have caused a problem. But we think this is really important for people with sight loss, and others, I should say, because those trains aren't in the platforms for very long.
Well, I suppose the next thing we ought to do is go for a ride, isn't it? So quiet.
I know.
Next station, Farringdon. Exit for trains to Gatwick and Luton airports.
And that, presumably, is where you'd like them to have said which side you would exit the next station.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it would make a real difference. And it's only a few words. They have a sound where you can hear where the doors are opening. Could you determine which side it was?
It's a bit tricky if you're sitting sideways, as
absolutely.
we are.
There we are.
Left. The trouble is that acoustically, that sort of noise is not very directional, is it?
No. And of course, we're travelling at the moment mid-afternoon,
Yeah.
so the train isn't too busy. You generally will get a seat, but the great thing that they've introduced, which we feel is really helpful, is that actually you can walk through the whole length of the train.
So that's good for blind people, but good for everybody.
Good
really.
for everybody, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we're saying about, inclusive design, Peter. It's not just for people with sight loss. It's not just for the wider disabled community. It's for everybody. Everybody is going to benefit.
Liverpool Street.
Clive Wood from Guide Dogs alighting with me on Liverpool Street. Well, listening to our journey has been Mark Evers. He's Chief Customer Officer with Transport for London, who are now responsible for the Elizabeth line. Mark, as you heard there, much to like from Clive, but still more to do. That was his verdict, I think. Can I ask you first about that absence of tactile paving on the edges of the platform as you board the trains? That seems surprising given the concern that's been expressed on this programme, amongst other places, about the slowness of putting tactile paving on mainline and other underground lines. Wouldn't this have been an ideal opportunity to do this right from the start?
A lot of work has gone into trying to ensure that the Elizabeth line is accessible. Obviously, within the central section stations on the Elizabeth line, there are platform edge doors that provide additional safety so that certainly there is no way that an individual can fall down onto the platform. But I guess we will get lots of lived experiences of people making use of the service, and then we will sort of pick up that and sort of try to make sort of improvements in the future where that's necessary.
One thing I think it would be easy for you to do something about, which really resonated with me, was that point about announcements to tell you which side you'd exit the train. I mean, when there's a lot of pushing and shoving and you're a blind person, you're a long way from the door, that would be really helpful to know which side you were going to get off. That's easy to do, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly something which, with sort of new rolling stock, so the trains that are on the system, we've got better information with both sort of audio and visual displays, because we are mindful that you do need to provide customers with that information. Like, obviously, as you sort of heard in the recording there is a noise that sort of sounds within the environment to indicate where the doors are opening and when they're opening. Certainly on some of our tube lines, we sort of provide that directional information. There's this balance that we're always trying to strike between the right amount of information that's helpful and bombarding people with too much information at key decision-making points. So again, it's one that we can reflect upon as people start to use the Elizabeth line in greater numbers. And if there's a really good case to make those improvements, then that's something which we can certainly look to do.
Well, my personal view is that's a really helpful bit of information and it won't do anybody else any harm. One final thing. I mean, some people will say this project began 13 years ago. It's cost £19 billion, as we've said. In spite of all the good things, couldn't we have expected the kind of features that you and I have been talking about being in from the start?
The job isn't done and there is more work that we can do. And I think that, certainly as people use the Elizabeth line, but also start to use the Elizabeth line alongside other parts of the transport network, I'm sure that we'll learn new things as well. And certainly the job is by no means done, and it's something which we're committed to as an organisation doing more of in the future.
Mark Evers, thank you very much indeed. Well, to get to our next story was a bit of a culture shock, actually. Back to the old trains on the Northern Line down to Nine Elms to an exhibition at the Outlined Gallery in Wandsworth with the intriguing title, Do You See What I See? The exhibition is the result of visually impaired and fully sighted professional artists working together to try to show what people with a variety of visual impairments see when they look at art. And the professional artists are sometimes in for some surprises. Well, I eavesdropped as Samantha Leftwich peered, I don't think she'll mind me using that term, at a painting by professional artist Lindsay Whitelaw and told Lindsay what it looked like to her.
So on the bottom left-hand side towards the corner, I see a silhouette of what looks like a face, in particular maybe the Queen's face, like on a coin, that sort of. And there's sort of a black bit that goes up around the top of her head, which I see as her crown. And as it goes further down, I see a silhouette, which is jet black, of what I describe as Moses parting the sea. The sort of bit of her crown looks like his staff that he's like holding up in the air.
Moses is standing in
the middle at the bottom.
It's brilliant.
Now, the problem that people are going to have with what we've just heard is to figure out what's going on. I have found it difficult to figure out because I haven't actually got any sight, and people listening to this will find it difficult. Lindsay Whitelaw, can you just explain the process that was going on with you and Sam?
When she was describing what she saw, I was hastily interpreting it with my paint.
So Sam is looking at a painting, describing what it looks like to her, and then you're changing it. Is that right?
I'm painting.
You're trying to paint what Sam says.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I suppose maybe that's where I come in. I have clearly a very overactive imagination. With the vision that I do have, I've got voids and patches. When I look at something, I can see small bits and I have to piece things together, and I think my brain maybe slightly overreacts. So I always say that my life has become more interesting since I haven't been able to see properly, because actually it makes up things that aren't actually there.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you that. What do you get out of this, the process? I can see it's quite interesting. I suppose this is to explain it to other people, is it? What's it for?
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of this sort of process, was to show the different ways that people with lots of different vision impairments see. And it has been really interesting because Lindsay's worked with a number of different visually impaired people, and we've all seen completely different things in the same piece of artwork. So we've done the process before, I think it was back in 2021.
We were about
2020, 21.
We were going to meet at the Tate and I was going to show some paintings. We were going to do that, and then lockdown came. So I sent you some photographs of my paintings, and you described the hilarious one was I had some Allen keys that I painted, and you looked at it and said, "Wow, I see a spider, a tarantula on a pistol. And I was going, this is amazing, because there is no tarantula spider. Anyway, so I've painted a tarantula on a pistol.
Yeah, and it was really, really exciting to kind of wait until we showed it at the Bloomsbury Art Exhibition last year. That was the first time I actually got to see Lindsay's interpretation of my description of the interpretation of Lindsay's original piece of work. So it was really, it was incredible to go, yes, that's exactly what was in my mind when I described it to you. So it was amazing.
It did actually work from that point of view. It did look like what you'd been seeing in your mind. People do think blindness and partial sight is kind of all one thing until they experience it, of sight getting less rather than of a different quality or character. Do people misunderstand a lot what you can see and what you can't see? Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I quite often get mistaken for a puppy raiser because they say you're young and your eyes, they don't look like you're blind. Being able to show people what it's like for me to see has been incredible and so rewarding, because people have given me feedback and said, I never knew that is how you saw Sam. For a sighted person to be able to actually see what it's like for me to see, I think has been more powerful for the sighted community than maybe the vision impaired community. But it's been an amazing experience, definitely.
Lindsay and Samantha, thank you both very much. Well, Elizabeth Manuel, who leads this group of blind and partially sighted artists, has her own paintings in the exhibition. Elizabeth was a judge until all that ended with a catastrophic stroke which resulted in the loss of most of her vision. Art, for Elizabeth, has proved a saviour. She told me how she got involved with this group.
Well, I was asked over 2 years ago through the Royal National Institute of the Blind if I would like to take part in an exhibition which was called Do You See What I See? And that had resonance with me as someone who's mostly blind, because one of the challenges is always trying to show and demonstrate to people exactly what it's like to have sight loss.
So have you gone through this process yourself? We've just been listening to Sam and Lindsay working together, but have you actually done this too?
Well, I have painted some of Lindsay's paintings, which is really mad for a blind, brain-injured person to take on the challenge of trying to copy a professional artist's work. I have painted what I can see of the 3 paintings that she gave to me. And over the years, I've kept some paints, but because I was a barrister, I had 2 young children, I was leading a very busy life, and then I became a judge at 39. So my life was always full on, and I didn't have time really to take on any more art or do anything. It was only when I had a brain hemorrhage and a stroke in 2011, when I was 46, that I was presented bizarrely with an opportunity to go back to my art.
We should say this stroke was a pretty catastrophic stroke, wasn't it? And sight loss was only one element of it.
It was, Peter. I had what's called a GCS of 3, which has I think a 99% mortality rate in most cases. And my then husband was told to go home and tell my teenage girls that Mummy would probably be dead by morning. I was in a coma for 2 weeks after the surgery, and when I came round, I was paralysed all down the left, and I'd lost the entirety of the left field of vision in each eye and also some of my right. But I also had diplopia, so I had double vision, which meant that it was almost impossible for me really to see or read.
And I ought to say, all this time you were having a very rough time domestically as well, weren't you?
I think it's fair to say I had no support from my then husband and just criticism. So that was really hard because I felt bad enough about myself, but being told you're stupid or you bump into things or because you can't watch TV with the rest of the family. Sadly, that was the story until 2019.
As you say, things have changed radically for you. What part has the art and this work that you're doing now, what part has that played in that?
it's been significant. And as I sit here and look at the 4 paintings I've done of my brain journey, what I see and what I hope everyone else sees is that through art, it speaks 1,000 words. It doesn't just speak the words that are on my paintings, but also by telling my story, that was healing me. But the process of doing it is so therapeutic, so mindful.
So if people come to this exhibition, what will they see? What's the sort of totality of what they'll see?
It's not just what you see on the canvas, it's what you feel. You know, I'm really conscious that people with visual impairments coming here may not feel that they're going to be able to get as much from it as they would, but there's audio descriptions, there's people on hand always to explain, and sighted people and visually impaired people will be able to see that sight loss covers a very wide spectrum of experience.
Elizabeth Manuel. The exhibition, Do You See What I See, is on at the Outlined Gallery in Wandsworth until the 25th of June. And that's it for today. Do keep your comments and suggestions coming. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. You can leave voice messages on 0161 836 1338, or you can go to our website bbc.co.uk/in touch. Museums and birdsong on the agenda next week. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings and studio manager Simon Highfield, goodbye.
Good morning everyone, this is the Scaffolding News. The Newport area, the Old Mill, St Cross Lane, Lighthouse Medical Centre, 62 Crocker Street, Exchange House, St Cross Lane, Newport Minster, St Thomas's Square, 29A, Lugley Street, St James's Street, 29B, Lugley Street, Chantry House, Pyle Street. Cowes is Granville Court, Bernard Road, 82 Park Road. Cowes Skips, 63 Moor Green Road, 22 Albert Street.
Ryde, 21A and 22A Cross Street. The Crown Inn Pub, St Thomas's Square, High Street. 3 Cross Street, Ryde Masonic Hall, John Street, 42 George Street, and Ryde Skips at 21A, 22A Cross Street. Seaview, Warren Boats, Blewett Avenue, and Seaview Skips outside the Buccaneers in Fairy Road.
Sandown, 20 High Street, Ventnor, 2 High Street, 24 Spring Hill, Castle Cliff, Castle Road, and Ventnor Skips, Touchdown, St Albans Road.
Vectis Radio, FM 104.6, the heart of the island's community.
And we're joined by our next guest. It's Liz Holliard from Isle of Wight's, well, Sight for Wight as they now call it. That's the trading name, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So Sight for Wight, and you're here because you've got Chris tied to a desk, haven't you?
I have indeed physically tied him to a desk.
Yeah, doing a video. I'm sure he'll make a wonderful job of it. Now, Lisa, you've come to talk about something that Sight for Wight is currently doing.
That's right. Next week is Midsummer Solstice, obviously on the 21st of June, and we wanted to unite the Isle of Wight to help prevent avoidable sight loss.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So, yeah, sunlight. Are we talking sunlight here?
We are. We're talking the UV rays that go into everybody's eyes, but particularly they are harmful to children's eyes because, of course, children have got brand new sparkly eyes which allow all the harmful rays to get onto their macula. And over time, this is what can contribute towards age-related macular degeneration.
Oh, right, okay. Yes, there's something that you often hear with older people. I've got macular degeneration. What is macular degeneration in simple terms?
In simple terms, it's where your macula has basically aged because it has been not entirely, but one of the causes is UVA and UV ray Bs basically just bombarding them and aging them.
Okay, I mean, it's a bit like if you leave certain plastics out in the sunlight, they become very brittle.
They do,
and
indeed.
It's entirely down to the UV rays in the sunlight that's taken all the plasticity out of them.
Because the other thing that UVA and UVBs can cause is cataracts, which is exactly that. It's when your own natural lens become cloudy.
Now, cataracts are relatively easy to fix these days. I'm not saying it's something you want to happen because it's easy to fix, but macular degeneration is a much more serious condition.
It is. There's two forms of it, wet and dry. And you can have injections which will materially slow it down. So if you do have AMD, which is age-related macular degeneration, it can be a scary diagnosis, but it is really important to stay going to the hospital, stay going to your opticians, because you can have injections which will seriously help to slow it down.
Okay, so the diagnosis would come from possibly your optician or somebody like that?
You would normally go have it. Your optician would normally initially diagnose it, then you would go to St Mary's.
So you might think, I'm not seeing quite as well, I'll get my eyes tested, and a good optician will spot that there's a problem going on.
It's your central vision that will go first, but your brain is very clever, so you won't realise at first your central vision is going, because your brain will fill the gaps in.
Okay.
Because your brain's a very clever thing, so it can take a little while to get diagnosed, because it's only when you can't read fine print and you think, actually, I can't read that anymore, because your brain's not so good at filling in the fine print.
Okay.
So that's when people start to notice the change.
So getting back now to what you're going to do on the Midsummer's Day, effectively.
Yep.
You're going to spread the message.
We are. So basically, we are going to unite the Isle of Wight. We want to be the first charity that has ever got every single Isle of Wight primary school involved. All we're asking the schools to do is play our video. So that's what Chris is finishing off at the moment. So we've made a video which, with our 4 characters that we use in our education programme, our little fluffy characters, they put the message across very strongly that you must protect your eyes, especially children's eyes.
Okay, and we're talking things like, obviously don't look at the sun, but sunglasses and things like that.
Yes, we're talking sunglasses, but proper sunglasses. They're not expensive, but they just need to be UV 400 protected. So that's the sticker that you're looking for on the side, UV 400. Sometimes they say UVA and UVB protection. But that's what you're looking for, that they have the protection to stop those rays going into your eyes.
And you'd get those from
anywhere,
sort of local high street chain pharmacies. Your optician would have them.
Yeah.
They don't have to be prescription. They're just
not at all
ordinary sunglasses.
Sunglasses.
You got sunglasses, Josie?
I have.
You have. Have you got some? Your glasses dim down when the sun shines? Are they the sort they are, or just ordinary sunglasses?
They're just normal sunglasses.
Okay. Fair enough. So on that point, if you've got the sort of glasses that darken, are they good enough for you?
Yeah, the reactor lights will certainly be UVA and UVB.
That's the word
protected.
I was looking for.
Yeah, reactor lights.
But
yes.
So they will do that for you. But obviously, young children generally don't need glasses for correction of sight. Generally, no. Some do, but generally don't. So a nice pair of cool-looking sunglasses will do the job admirably.
Absolutely. The other thing you can do is put a hat on. Not quite as good, but again, wearing the hat diffracts the rays from going directly into your eyes.
So we've got the direct. Is there much coming from reflected surfaces in terms of these UV rays?
They can reflect off anything, absolutely. Water in particular, if you're out on the sea, very important to put sunglasses on.
And of course snow.
Yeah, and snow.
Should we ever get any ever again? but anything bright like that. So sunglasses on. Don't think of them as protecting your eyes, although they do. Think of them as looking cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
or in the words of our little salty character, wicked.
Okay, so are you sending this video out to all the schools, or are they going to have to apply for it?
We have already contacted every school, and over the next 2 days we're going to physically deliver the video on a USB stick to all of the schools.
Excellent. That's an excellent idea. And if people wanted advice on sunglasses, they can contact Sight for Wight?
Absolutely, anytime. 522205.
522205. Give them a call and they'll advise you on the sunglasses. If not, talk to your optician or your pharmacy. They'll have exactly what you need, almost certainly in stock.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lisa. That's very helpful. Hope it goes well.
Thank you.
And if you let us have a copy of the video, we'll put it on our website.
Certainly will.
On our Facebook page, anyway. I'm not sure if we can fit it on the website, but we'll certainly put it on our Facebook page.
Thank you very much.
Your support matters. We operate thanks to the support of local businesses. If you would like to advertise on Vectis Radio, FM 104.6, contact our team today. Marketing@vectisradio.fm.